Ulric, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell me, how was 2 years in Iraq?
It was an amazing 2 years, but it was also an exceptional experience. Obviously, we went through a lot of challenges. The biggest, of course, was COVID, which affected all of our ability to work. And so my biggest regret is that I wasn't able to travel in Iraq as much as I would have liked. So the person that I replaced as ambassador, I think he got to visit something like 15 governorates in Iraq. I got to visit only about 5, and so that will be a regret of mine, that I wasn't able to travel as much and to visit as many of the cities in Iraq and Kurdistan.
I see. And politically speaking, what did you see in the country in these 2 years? And based on this, what do you expect in the future of Iraq?
Well, I arrived in mid-November of 2019 at a time when we had the demonstrations happening in Baghdad and in southern Iraq, and a level of violence that was being deployed against them that shocked the conscience. And so 2 years later, to have been here to see the elections process through to its conclusion, and to have seen the process unfold in a manner that gave, I think, a lot of confidence to international observers and hopefully to Iraqis as well. I think that marks a period of genuine progress in Iraq. Now, obviously, there remain very serious problems that we'll have to continue to deal with in partnership with our Iraqi friends. But I leave certainly more optimistic than when I arrived 2 years ago.
And now the next step is formation of the government. You told me that there is a progress since 2 years ago. Do you think the process of formation of the new government is going to help this process, this progressing process, or do you think it may bring new conflicts and even armed conflicts in the country?
I think this is a process that Iraqis will have to manage themselves. We participated as Canada in monitoring the elections as part of the EU monitoring mission. And obviously we were partners with UNAMI as well. We funded their observation mission as well. Our part was to deliver a process that was credible. What happens after that, in terms of negotiating the formation of the next government, is really a process that Iraqis have to own. We think that there is enough goodwill among leaders and an understanding that nobody wants to see a situation that moves backwards into uncertainty and into violence. So that's not a prediction of what's going to happen. It's more of a hope that the losers will accept the results and that the winners will be gracious and that everyone will come together in order to serve the interests of the people.
Okay. During his comments in a panel in MERI Forum, the U.S. ambassador mentioned about the relation of the United States with the Kurds dating back to 30 years ago when the U.S. was a part of a mission to protect the Kurdish civilians and the Kurdish people, which finally led to the formation of the KRG. And he said that the U.S. is going to continue. In case of the need of the KRG for the support of Canada, are you ready to support the Kurdistan Regional Government, or is Canada ready to support the Kurdistan Regional Government? Not only in humanitarian fields, not only economically, but also politically and in terms of security.
So it's important to be clear that we don't have the same history as the United States. So for us, our presence in a fairly major way in Iraq really began in 2016, and it was in reaction to the crisis of Daesh occupation and the fight against Daesh. We came to Iraq at that point at the invitation of the Iraqi government and deployed different lines of effort. So defense cooperation and military assistance as part of the coalition against Daesh, as well as the command country of the NATO mission for the first 2 years. And as you alluded to, we also deployed development and humanitarian and stabilization assistance. Most of that effort was focused in the liberated areas from Daesh, because our goal was to create the conditions for IDPs to be able to return to their homes and to address the conditions that promote radicalization. That's an exceptional circumstance because generally we would not have an aid program in a country like Iraq. So when we look at Iraq, It's probably the wealthiest country in the world in which we have an assistance program. It's an upper middle income country. So we treat the post-Daesh phase as a transition period. And as I said, for the last 5 years, we've been investing quite a lot of money, about $500 million since 2016, along with the defense cooperation. But for us, the future is not going to be one where there's a recipient and donor relationship with Iraq or with Kurdistan. We look to building a more normal bilateral relationship, which is based on common interest, trade and investment, and people-to-people linkages. So I'm not promising, nor in federal Iraq nor in Kurdistan, that there's going to be donor assistance coming from Canada, because again, we think that if we're still here as a donor 5 years from now, that's because we failed. We failed to manage the transition to a normal bilateral relationship.
And are you confident that that transitional period is gonna be completed in next years, before next 5 years?
I won't say that I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I think what I've concluded after 2 years is that, increasingly the issues that are proving most difficult to solve are ones that outside observers and friends of Iraq and Iraq's partners can't really affect directly through programming anymore. We're running into issues that have to do with deep issues of governance and of citizenship, both in the Kurdistan region and in Iraq, and the ability of Iraq's friends to substitute themselves for functions of the Iraqi government or decisions that have to be made within the Iraqi domestic political consensus. That ability, I think, is diminishing. So, I look ahead to the next few years as a crucial period in Iraq's history where leaders have to step up and they have to make difficult decisions, and they have to really commit to leading Iraq's development. If there continues to be an interest on the part of Iraq's friends, such as Canada, to be there to support, if there's technical needs that we can support, of course we'll be there. But I think the period of expecting Iraq's friends to, again, substitute themselves for functions of the Iraqi government, I think that's coming to an end.
I see. And my final question is going to be about the elections in Iraq. So I think you were also one of the observers of the elections. What did you observe? Are you confident about the results of the elections are genuine?
Right. So we had 4 observation teams in Basra, in Baghdad, and in the Kurdistan region.
You were personally?
Yes, well, I personally was in Baghdad, so I observed in Mansour, but we had colleagues in Basra, in the Kurdistan region, and in other places in Baghdad as well. I think we concluded, much like the European Union mission that we were part of, and much as UNAMI, that technically the election was clean. It was correct. It was well managed. I think IHEC deserves a lot of credit for how they handled it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the process as a whole was entirely free and fair, because there were numbers of problems sort of in the process of determining eligibility of candidates as well as voters. So many voters had technical issues in order to be able to use their right to vote. But those problems are minor, I think, in comparison with the bigger success that we've achieved. Obviously, the rate of participation was lower than we would have liked, but we have confidence.
Do you have such low participation rates in your country, in Canada?
Our participation rates in Canada are not always much higher. So we're usually a bit above 50%, but it varies. And so I think that the difficulty we faced, in the last few months in Iraq was, public trust in the process was not very high. What I hope people have seen now with this process is that their vote actually matters. We saw parties win large numbers of seats. We saw parties lose large numbers of seats. And so I'm hoping that some of the people who chose not to participate because they didn't think their vote would matter, I hope now they understand that their vote can have a direct effect on the kind of parliament that we have in the future.
I see. So where are you leaving to? What's the next station? Where is the next station?
So I will be leaving Iraq and moving to Jerusalem. So my wife is our representative in the Palestinian territories. And after 2 years apart, and with COVID having made it very difficult to travel, I'm going to enjoy the next few months and reconnect with my spouse.
Okay, so enjoy your time in Jerusalem, and hope to see you again in Kurdistan.
Thank you so much.
One day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.